So hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining, whether you're here live or you're watching the recording. You're here energetically, so we appreciate that. And we've got a great group. So tonight is our introduction to the service of leadership, or the spirit of service within leadership. And yeah, I'm excited about this. I find this to be a fascinating and interesting and complex and nuanced and layered topic. So what we'll do is we'll go through the content that I've got here for you. Again, if at any point, if you've got any questions that you want to ask, feel free to type away in the chat. And yeah, happy to hear any insight or any clarity that comes through. It's always great to hear. And to start, if you would like to just share in the chat where you're joining from, and if there are any specific questions you want to ask, or anything in particular you want us to cover, and I'll do my best to make sure we integrate that. But yeah, obviously, if there's burning questions or things you're looking for clarity on, then please do that now. And just to make sure I don't forget to mention this, in a week there will be another call, again on leadership, but it will be more of a clearing and healing call. So we'll review some of the stuff that we do tonight, but with the added element of kind of some meditation, some healing, some resolution of old belief systems and emotional stuff that goes with leadership themes. So yes, you're really welcome to join that as well. So I'll send that out in the email that goes out, or you can have a look on my website on the events page. Yes. So, hey, Poppy. Yeah, warmer than chilly Edinburgh. Yeah, it's a little cold today. The temperature's definitely dropped in the last few days. I'm with you on that. A few more layers for sure. Hey, Mag, swaddled in a fleece hoodie blanket and icy Aberdeen shirt. Yeah, that's the way to do it. Hey, Stuart. Hey, Allison in Glasgow. Chai tea is warming me. Oh, yeah. See, that's a good idea too. Take all these ideas. Hey, Liz. Hey, Amnish. Hey, Brianna, joining from Portobello by the sea, just outside of Edinburgh. It's a lovely place. Valerie joining from Edinburgh. Great to be here and connect with you all. Yes, yes. Stuart in snowy Pennycook. Oh, you got some snow. All right. Bernie in Galway. Trisha is in Durham near Newcastle. Awesome. Great, great. So exciting. Yeah. So while you guys are introducing yourself, I'll just say a quick hello for those who haven't worked with me before or don't know much about my work. Really briefly, I am a mentor and teacher for healing practitioners, for spiritual teachers, and for purpose-driven leaders. So I work one-to-one with clients. I run events, and they are all focused on kind of different facets of healing and consciousness. Um, so yeah, so my background is in complex needs, addiction, homelessness, and then moved into the healing realm. Oh God, in 2009, really officially. Although I was super intuitive my whole life, so really been in that realm for a long time, but more officially since then. Yes, and I started doing these monthly calls. I think it was around April last year, maybe. And I've just been choosing topics that either feel very aligned for, the month, the season, the transits, or what's very current with clients and students as well. So hopefully these are really useful and timely as well. I found that they have been for me for sure. Yeah. So that's a little bit about me. So again, this is really an opportunity to kind of explore the topic of leadership, and not just leadership, but healthy leadership from a place of service. And so to talk through some of the facets of that, some of the, what I would deem to be some of the, if necessary or required, or the right words, necessary or required virtues and values that a great leader would have. We'll also talk through a little bit of maybe some of the shadow side of where people's stuff gets in the way of them being healthy, effective leaders. And yeah, really just to kind of create some awareness around some of this. So hopefully you'll have some aha moments, or recognize some things that, oh yeah, maybe that's an area I could look at. Or, oh, that's a gift I already have. Maybe I could apply that more. Yeah, so hopefully that will that will come up for these things will come up for all of you too. Yeah, Allison, love the Portobello beachfront. Is a great vibe. You're right. Yeah. And Lucia is in icy saffron Walden. I don't know where that is. Also on the chai. Looking forward to fully embracing my leadership skills and having clarity on how I can use these skills throughout other relationships. Amen. I love that. Thank you for sharing. That's perfect. Mag's interested to learn how I can up level to a higher graceful style of leadership personally and professionally. Well, now you're just taking words from things that I've written down. So that's great. Professionally due to having been tasked rather than seeking it out. And we're going to talk about that too, the reluctant leaders. Yeah, it's not a bad thing, Mag. So yeah. But you're right, learning to embrace it. Yeah, so my kind of relationship with leadership and kind of stepping into leadership roles is a little bit like what Mags is saying. I've always been kind of the reluctant leader and found that I just kept being asked to step into roles where I was either doing some managing of other people or training people how to do things. And it wasn't something that I was seeking out. In fact, it was something that really used to scare me. But it became a theme over and over and over again. And so this is now something I've learned to embrace and accept as part of my makeup and part of who I am. That I know if I want to teach and share information, if I want to share consciousness and things, then I have to be willing to be in some type of leadership role or embrace the virtues and qualities of a leader. Yeah, so, and I've done just in terms of my own training, I've done some leadership training with Jamie Wheel and the Flow Genome Project. If any of you guys are familiar with their work, they're pretty cool. And just, yeah, lots of reading and stuff around it. So that's kind of where some of my perspective comes from, but also really reading a lot of philosophy. I'm influenced by kind of Stoic philosophies and yeah, but also my upbringing with learning about and as we all do, kind of seeing great leaders and not so great leaders throughout our lives, whether these are teachers, whether these are, politicians, whether these are parents, whether these are whoever in society and within our cultures and those structures are within those roles, and whether they are leaning into the gifts that you would hope that they would have or not. And obviously humans are fallible, that no one's going to get it right all the time. But for me, at least, the hope is that they're working on that. So the things that I'm going to talk about tonight are things that I found to be, again, very, very healthy qualities to develop and to cultivate within ourselves. Because the reality is that we are all meant to lead, even if it's just ourselves. Even if it's just being able to follow our own intuition, our own sense of integrity, our own sense of honesty and authenticity, being able to tap into those qualities and be able to make choices and, actions and decisions from that energy. That's really where all this is starting from. And then when you cultivate that and create that, you then become a leader within your family or within your friendship groups, or just it is that showing up by example. So you can lead in very subtle, more quiet ways. It doesn't have to be a loud grandstanding, and I would encourage you to actually do the smaller first and allow yourself to do that. Because what happens is that we can have this mindset that being a leader is this big thing where we're on a platform and where we have to look a certain way or be a certain way. We have to speak a certain way. And that's just our insecurities and just the nonsense, the illusions that we play through our mind. So really for me, it is recognizing that we all have these qualities and these capacities within us, and we just do it by showing up every day. Um, so what happens is if we have these ideas around what it is supposed to be, and again, we see this in media and culture and, all the shiny, silly stuff that we see that isn't always totally true. But what happens is it triggers a lot of fears that we have around being visible, around being seen. It can trigger old experiences where we have felt misjudged or feeling like we were either attacked or, it created conflict or drama within our lives. So we can start to go into these really interesting dynamics with ourselves and our own insecurities, our own fears, our own traumas that we have experienced in the past. And that shadowy stuff, that shadow side, then starts to get in the way of actually understanding what being a leader or being in that place of leadership really is and what it really means. So we're going to talk through some of the shadowy stuff too tonight. So that, and I say this with lots of love, this is to help you get rid of all the bullshit excuses that you make all the time for not stepping up and stepping into your fullest potential. And we all bullshit ourselves. We all have this capacity to try to talk ourselves out of doing what we know is healthy, what we know is best for us. We all have the ability to get into that doubt and that worry and that concern. And when we start to listen to that, this is when we fail ourselves. This is when we fail the people around us. This is when we fail. Let me maybe rephrase that. Maybe failure isn't the right word. It is when we do not allow ourselves to be in that higher consciousness. And anytime we are listening to our doubts and fears, we cave in, we collapse, we constrict, we become smaller, we become quieter, we become more fixed and hard. And, we're going to talk about leadership, how this is an expansive energy. When you really step into those higher alignments, into that higher aspect of who you really are, you expand and your body changes in terms of posture, but also energy. You sound different, you look different, your energy comes across in a different way. And so really, this isn't just about leadership. This is about you showing up as the authentic, true you. It just so happens that all of this also fits really well into the leadership stuff, because when you step into the role of being a leader, you have to be authentic. It's required. You cannot step into a role of leadership and do it well in a healthy, aligned way, from a place of love, from a place of service, from a place of integrity, and lie to yourself and to the people that are around you. Because they'll see through it and you'll lose any respect you'd garnered in the first place. But people won't listen. At some point, they'll recognize where you're not being honest, where you're trying to hide away. They'll recognize what your insecurities are and what your fears are. And let me say first, everybody's got them. It's not to say that you have to be fearless in order to be in a role of leadership, but you're going to make your life easier for yourself, and for those you serve, you're going to have a much greater impact on them if you're willing to face those fears and those insecurities and work through them. So that instead of feeling like, you hear this all the time, people feel like they're a fraud, they feel like they're not good enough, they're not worthy. If those are your feelings about yourself, and you try to show up and step into that role of leadership, and you're second guessing yourself all the time, and you're not following your intuition, and you're getting caught up in the drama that goes around within and around you, you're going to have a really hard time. and you're not going to be as effective or healthy as you can be for yourself or for those people. So for me, being in a role of leadership requires that you do some healing. It requires you to heal things from your past. It requires you to be conscious and aware of yourself. It requires you to look at your blind spots and those shadow aspects of yourself. Because if you don't look at them, they will be shown to you. So I've talked about this before, and this was one of the greatest realizations of my life. Which is why I talk about it a lot. When you decide that you as a human, as a soul, as a whatever level this is on, when you decide, I want to be a greater person, a greater mother, a greater friend, I want to be a better leader, I want to be a better healer, I want to have more honor and respect in my relationships, I want to have more love and care in my interactions with people, I want to communicate with more honesty. So if you're kind of at this level here and you say, I want to move to this level in whatever facet of life that is, I think people confuse this bit a lot. People think that we get tested all the time. I don't think we get tested. What happens is that when you say I'm here and I want to go to here, whatever is creating the difference here, whatever is getting in the way of you living this reality, of you being more honest, of being more authentic, being more kind and loving, of having more respect in your life, all the stuff that's getting in the way gets highlighted so you can deal with it. We're getting what we ask for on some level all the time. So if you say, I want my life to be here, this is what I want it to look like and feel like, life says, okay, here's what you need to change in order to get there. So we're not having to prove our self. We're not being tested. It's not anything like that. It gets harder because all the stuff that we have avoided for years, all the things we've tried to sweep under the carpet, all the things we've gone, nope, I can't deal with that. I'm not dealing with that. I don't know how to do it. Says, okay, you are ready now. You're ready. You're ready on some level. So let's do it. So yeah. So if you are consciously saying, I want to step into a role of leadership, and or if you are being called into a role of leadership, my advice to you would be to get on it and just start to heal your stuff. Just start to, so whatever we talk about tonight that feels triggering, whatever feels scary for you in those roles, start working on that stuff and just make it easier for you. Be proactive now. Nobody wants to be proactive, but I really encourage you to do it. Yeah, Stuart, I love that. You can't smuggle lower states of consciousness into the higher realms. Amen. It doesn't work. You're exactly right. So so I know I had enough insight and intuition about, I wrote a book, I think in 2015 or 16. I had enough insight and intuition, enough people did readings around me writing this book where I was like, well, this is clearly going to happen. I guess I better learn how to write a book. I knew it was coming. I was like, I don't want to fight it. I want to enjoy the process. So what do I need to work on? What are my insecurities and fears around this so that I can just go and do it? Because if it's part of your dharma to be of service, and we really, for all of us, we have a purpose here. We have purposes while we are here. And they're not just one-off events. They're not just one-off things we do. These are themes that run through our lives. And every purpose that we have is to be of service to the world in some way. Again, it may be smaller things, but again, the smaller things can have massive impacts on the people around you. So again, it might just be with, having a family. It might be, working within your community. I mean, part of your dharma may be to be an artist and bring beauty to the world. It could be to help create communities and bring people together. There's infinite number of ways you could serve. And the reality is we all feel most fulfilled and complete and at home when we are being of service to the world, when we are living our gifts and when we are being of service. That is when we feel the most useful, the most aligned, the most fulfilled, the most content, and the most happy. So if you are called to step into a leadership role, again, it might just be in your interpersonal relationships. It might be within your inner circle. But if there's a call to step up and either change the energy, change the dynamic, change the conversation, then yeah, this is for you. It's time for you to do it. And you can make excuses and you can fight it all you want. You just make it harder on yourself. And it just creates drama. It just creates conflict and makes it all harder. So this is my little bit of advice or guidance for you, is to embrace it and just do it. Like, find a way to enjoy it. Find a way to make it interesting. Find a way to make it rewarding. Because if it feels like a slog, then you got some stuff to clear. That's all. Just some stuff to clear. Yeah. So it requires you to do some healing. It requires you to have some time to be introspective, to look at your stuff, and to start to work through those things. And we all have the capacity to do that. Everyone does. You wouldn't be called into a leadership role if you didn't. So one of the big things that, so I'm going to talk about some of the values and virtues and some of these higher elements that are, maybe not all of these are required, but I think that they're important. And again, if you guys have ones that you want to add to this list, or things that I maybe missed or that you also find important, again, feel free to add them in the chat. We'll get a good list at the end, some things to aspire to. So for me, looking at things like integrity and dignity, for me, those things kind of go together. So for me, integrity is what you say and what you do aligns. They're not very different. So, you're showing up as pretty much the same person all the time because it's really authentic. It's really honest. It's who you are. And it's shockingly, that can be a hard thing for people. Not shockingly. Let me take that back, because we can all have a capacity to again fail or fall short with integrity. And this is because we're slipping into our vices. It's because we're slipping into our insecurities and into our fears. So for me, having integrity requires courage, and it requires us to understand what actually is aligned within ourselves, what we actually value, what's actually important to us. And anytime people are slipping out of their alignment, or what they're saying and they're doing don't match up, it's just showing where they're still working that out. Yeah. So I think it's really looking at whether you're courageous enough. And courage means you face your fears. Let's just get that out first of all. Bravery is when you are fearless. We all want to be brave, but you don't get to bravery until you have courage first. Because what happens is, once you face your fears, you work through them and you're no longer afraid of them. So then you become fearless, you become brave. So a lot of people are kind of waiting until they're brave. That's not how you become brave. People are just waiting to be ready. I hear this all the time. I'm just waiting to be ready. I'm waiting for it to be comfortable. Well, guess what? Most of the things in life that are worthwhile are not going to feel easy or comfortable all the time. And I would say maybe a lot of the time it doesn't, especially if it's something new and it's pushing a comfort zone or pushing an edge. Yeah. So again, going back to, leadership requires you to do some healing and have some evolution within you. That's the integrity and the courage that comes in. And dignity is one of my favorite qualities. There's a regalness to it. And for me, being dignified is that if you think of a king or a queen with a crown on their head, not so much, because I know people have stuff around authority and things like that. We'll come to that in a minute. But if you think about the posture that requires, kings and queens wore these crowns with all these crystals and stones to help open up their intuitive senses, to help bring them into alignment. But you also, if you're cowering down, if you're hiding away, your crown falls off. You can't hide away and be dignified. So it really is that feeling of being upright, of being strong, of looking life in the eye, of looking circumstances in the eye. You can't slink away. You can't avoid the stuff. You cannot avoid the stuff. So again, so that thing of me for, dignity and integrity has that real idea of, if you can just start with that feeling in your body of what would it feel like to be dignified. You can feel your spine straightening. You can feel your muscles becoming kind of stronger, holding you up, not becoming fixed and tight, but they're just holding your body in that healthier state. So you're much more aligned. So when you do that with your physical body, it also happens energetically, and you're a much healthier channel for the divine and for all the good stuff. So I feel like that's a good foundation just to start with looking at kind of the qualities of moving into leadership roles. And I touched on this before. For me, it really is looking at it from a place of service. I know that when we start to looking at this shadow stuff, there are people seeking leadership because they're seeking not even power, but I would say more of a control. And there's a difference within all those. So we'll break that down. So when we look at leaders who are unhealthy, who are out of alignment, who don't have integrity, who don't have that dignity, this is their shadow stuff that's motivating it. So they're trying to control life. They're trying to control other people because they aren't comfortable in themselves. So they're scared of other people. They're scared of other ideologies or philosophies, ways of thinking and being. So they're trying to make things a bit more fixed so that they feel that they can understand the world, so they feel like they can manage things in the way that works for them. It's a really small way to think and a really small way to see the world, though. So anytime this attempt to control comes in, there's a misalignment, there's a lack of integrity. So there's also a big difference between control and power. The reality is that control doesn't even really exist. You can't control anybody else. I can't control anybody. I can't make them feel a certain way. I can't make them think a certain way. We try to unconsciously or subconsciously a lot of the time, for sure. But we get into this narrative a lot of times, and it pushes us into this kind of victim mode of, I feel like I'm being controlled by this person or this situation or this government or this ideology or this, whatever the narrative is, whatever the story is. That's just our stuff that's coming up, where we feel disempowered, where we feel like we don't have the ability to make a change, where we feel like we don't have the ability to create an impact or make a different choice. So if you can kind of start to work your way out of this narrative where control is a factor or control is a problem in your life, then that gets you out of the victim narratives and also allows you to step more into that role of being a healthier leader. I can feel that. Just breathe in whatever healing's coming through now. It's already happening. So power, and this is, I really wanted to kind of break down this as well. A lot of people confuse power with abuse and control, or attempts to control. Power has nothing to do with abuse. Abuse is just abuse. Power is based in respect and love and truth and honor and all these higher qualities. That's what power is based in. So when we feel empowered, it is because we are embodying those qualities and expressing them in our lives. Nobody else can empower us. You hear this all the time. People are like, oh, I want to empower other people. That doesn't work either. I mean, you might help them to recognize some of their qualities that are empowering for them, that they can live, but don't empower other people. And actually that's something we need to feel within ourselves. So it really is kind of recognizing the truth about what power really is, and recognizing that we are the creators of our own circumstances, of our lives, of what we create, of what we feel, of what we think. That comes from within us. So if we feel disempowered, again, we're moving into that victim role, that stance. So it's really kind of looking at how do I, within myself, recognize ways in which I am powerful? How do I recognize that the choices that I'm making are creating the circumstances that I'm in, and that I can be empowered to make different choices with that? So in terms of looking at power, what happens with a lot of people is they have this fear in their head. And again, for lots of reasons, these can be ancestral memories, this can be past life memories, it can be stuff from this lifetime, stuff from the collective humanity, where they have witnessed abuses, or they've been a part of abuses, or their family members have, and there's this fear of, well, I will abuse the power that I have. I will take advantage of other people. I will be manipulative. I'm afraid I will do these things that I've witnessed in the past. So what I would say with those things is, then it's again worth looking at the shadow side of that, looking at what your judgments are within yourself, where you feel like you're weak or incapable, or because it could be a recognition that there's stuff in you that needs to be healed, so that you do show up with more integrity and dignity and honesty. Yeah, so a lot of these fears we have about ourselves, the past, repeating the past, there's something to learn from it. There's something to recognize, and there's just something to gain some clarity on, so that you can learn and grow from that. I think a lot of times within the healing community, it's easy to get into this thing of, oh, that's just a belief system. Oh, that's just something you need to clear. But there's a why behind that. And I've heard this a lot too, with like people wanting to market themselves or their business or their services, what they do in a professional sense, and having some insecurities or some fears there. And the question is, is it just fears that you just need to clear, or like, do you have a conscience? And are you just trying to make sure that you're aligned with your conscience and doing things from a place of integrity? So yeah, so maybe that's something just to kind of play with. So again, it's not to say, if they're deep fears and things like that, usually there's a misunderstanding in there. There's usually something to heal within that. But if you're questioning some things within yourself, and you're really looking at yourself and going, are there some elements in here that I need to heal, so I do not project this stuff onto other people, so that I don't show up in my shadow, so that I'm not getting triggered and, creating all these filters and lenses where things just are not clear or true. Maybe play with that a little bit. I mean, again, so many of the judgments we have about ourselves are not true. It's old stuff. But I do think some of that stuff comes up as, because it's so important for us to get this right, and to show up in really healthy ways, to show up with real integrity, to show up with real dignity. So I don't think every question about yourself, every little doubt or moment of second guessing, that's not all just fears to clear. Sometimes that's the nudge to go, oh, maybe you're out of alignment here. Maybe there is something here for you to look at, for you to learn from, for you to grow from. Yeah, so people can be a bit cavalier, a bit dismissive. Oh, it's just a fear to clear. It's just something to clear, get it out of the way. It's just a block. I'm like, well, maybe there's something deeper going on there. And there really is an awakening moment there. There really is something to learn from and grow from. So let me know, hopefully that's clear. We could spend all day just talking about that one little bit, but yeah, if there's any questions about any of that, again, feel free to type away in the chat. Oh yeah, we're okay for time. I'm going to touch on a couple more things that feel important to touch on, and again, some of the shadow sides. So Mags, I think you mentioned grace. Grace is one of my other favorite words. I use the word grace a lot. Um, and I always think of like dancers when I think of grace, either ballet dancers or yeah, really any other kind. You can think of art and music as graceful too in a lot of ways, but there's something about kind of the physical movement of grace that calls me. But what I find really interesting, and again, this is another big lesson for myself, you know, people train to be graceful. They strengthen their bodies, they practice, they dedicate time and energy to making things graceful, to making it look so easy because they've really worked towards mastery. They've worked to, yeah, shape their bodies, shape their minds, shape their, all of this stuff, their gifts, their skills into something that then becomes graceful. So again, I think a lot of times people are trying to start off something new and wondering why it's not as easy as it looks in other people. But it's because they've had years or experience or time to really cultivate and develop that. So the first time, if you sit down in front of a piano for the first time and it doesn't sound beautiful, hey, guess what? You're a beginner. But you can practice, and you can hone those gifts and hone those skills so it does start to sound that way. So I don't know if this is good news or bad news, Mags, and anyone else who's talking about graceful leadership. It may be a little bit of a process and it may be a bit of a practice, but I think it's also remembering that there are experiences and knowledge and wisdom that you can take from other jobs or life experiences or relationships and bring in. You're not starting anything brand new all the time. I think we can get in our minds that, oh, it's a new job or a new relationship, I'm starting from scratch. And that's not true. We're always building, we're always adding to. So it might be worth just kind of meditating on, well, what are the skills from other jobs or areas or just your personal life that I can start to inject into this so that there is more of a comprehensive, I don't know, wisdom or experience that comes through with this. Yeah, because we can sell ourselves short a lot of the times. So hopefully that makes that feel a bit more graceful, if not easy, graceful. Yeah. And one of the big things I talk about a lot, because man, just everybody is figuring this out, is conscious boundaries. It's healthy boundaries. And I have seen this over and over again where people in leadership roles, and I've done this myself too, looking back at my own blind spots in life where I've gotten this wrong, where the boundaries weren't as clear as they could have been, should have been. And it created problems. It created some unhealthy dynamics with the people that I was trying to serve, that I was trying to help or be part of their journey. And so one of the greatest things that you can do for yourself and the people that you are leading or of service to is to keep checking in with your boundaries and whether they're clear enough, whether they are coming from a healthy place, whether they are coming from a really like altruistic is the word that's coming through here. Because if you are creating relationship dynamics unconsciously where you're trying to just get your needs met or you're trying to feed the ego stuff, which we all have, that's what's going to create the most problems for you. Yeah. And again, it really, for me, it keeps coming back to, as a leader, how am I of service to people? And it's not about being on a pedestal. It's not about being above people. It's about being with them and leading from that space. So again, it's you lead from integrity, you lead from heart and soul. And if you're doing it for other reasons, that's when the drama happens. That's when things get triggered. That's when things become difficult and hard. Because again, these are the areas where your blind spots are, where you maybe haven't been in as much integrity as you thought you were. but again, these are opportunities to learn and grow and get better and to evolve. Yeah, so what happens is when people do not have healthy boundaries, then their own wounding, their own filters, their own projections come out in their relationship dynamics with the people they're meant to be serving. This is where leaders can become, again, oftentimes unconsciously, not knowing that they're doing it, where they can either become manipulative or be manipulated. This is where issues around control can come in, or attempts to control. Yeah, so one of the biggest things I would share that would be, yeah, really good to have a look at is how are your boundaries? How healthy are they? And this will show up not only in the people you're working with or you're leading, this will also show up in your boundaries with, your family, your friends, your work, how you spend your time, what you consume, what you put in your body, all that. Really, that's all. There's boundaries within any relationship. So whether it's a person or an inanimate object, or it's those things will show up. So you can look at your relationship with money, or your relationship with food, or your relationship with I don't know, a sibling, and that will show you where you might have blind spots in your leadership too. It's amazing how it works. So you can look at other areas of your life and recognize where you may have some, I don't know, some misunderstandings or some areas of clarity that you could gain. Yeah. Oh, yeah, just breathe in whatever healing you're ready to receive there. Yeah, and with the kind of the last bit I'll talk about, and we'll open up for questions if there's anything coming up for people, is stuff around kind of being a pioneer and also visibility, which they may go hand in hand. Sometimes I think they do. So the visibility, I always love bringing up this stuff. It's amazing the number of people I talk to who on some level just want to hide away. That the thought of being seen by others or heard by others feels scary or overwhelming. But guess what? If we were meant to be invisible, we would just be invisible. And we're not. So just for your own human experience, I would encourage you to have a look at these things and maybe work through some of these, because they'll change your relationships. They'll change your dynamics with other people. But yeah, the stuff around being really transparent, about being honest, and yeah, about really being heard is important, and having a degree of comfort with that. I'm not saying it's always easy or it's always comfortable, but at least getting to the point where there's a willingness to do that. And what's interesting is stuff around like confidence and self-esteem comes up here. And I cannot remember where I heard this from, so I apologize for not giving credit to wherever it's due. Years ago I read this, where it's this notion that self-esteem comes from esteemable acts. So again, it's like people just want to be brave, but they don't engage the courage to get to bravery. It's the same thing with self-esteem. You can't just sit in your house by yourself and do nothing and expect to build self-esteem. Self-esteem is cultivated through esteemable acts, and esteemable acts are you keeping the promises to yourself. They're you choosing things out of integrity instead of fear. They're you being consistent, and aligned and healthy within yourself, within what you say. It's that integrity stuff again. So you build self-esteem by following through and making choices that are healthy and that are aligned. You don't just magic it into you. Wouldn't that be great? So again, people just want to feel confident and comfortable being seen and heard, but they haven't worked the muscle to create that. They haven't allowed themselves to speak or to show up, or they haven't really been honest with what they're saying and what they're doing. And then wondering why it feels off and why people aren't resonating with it. It's because it hasn't really been true. It hasn't really been honest. Yeah, so again, that's just something to maybe play with and kind of have a look at in how are the ways I disappoint myself? What are the things that I say I'm going to do and then I don't do them? Or what do I say? I'll start tomorrow. I'm sure we can all relate to that. We've all done that. I'll start tomorrow. Just put it off one more day. Or you start to do something, you get into a healthy practice and it lasts a couple weeks and then it goes away again. And you feel great while you do it and then you stop doing it. So what happens is you break trust in yourself because you're not following through with yourself. So yeah, so the practice might simply be for the next month or so, say, okay, I'm these are the things I'm going to commit to, and like make it like 1 or 2 or 3 things. Don't try to revamp your whole life. You'll get overwhelmed. It's too much. But pick a couple things and say, no, this is what I'm going to do, and not just because I think it's the right thing to do, but because I feel it within me, and I know that this is something that's going to contribute to my health, my happiness, that sense of integrity, that self-esteem. So yeah, it can be really simple. It can be something small, but make it something important enough that you're going to feel a difference if you do it, and it's going to make a difference if you do it. I mean, it could be you go out for a walk for 10 minutes every day, but if you know you're going to feel better for doing that, and that's something you struggled with in the past, it could be something simple like that. Yeah, so really allow yourself to recognize that self-esteem stuff, because again, you cannot rely on other people to prop up your self-esteem or make you feel confident. They can't do it. Nobody else can do it. If a person can tell you all day long that you're amazing, if you don't feel it, if you don't believe it, it's not going to make that much of a difference. And you can't expect other people to do that for you because it doesn't work. It just doesn't. So yeah, all the ways that you're hiding away, all the ways that you're avoiding, the insecurities that keep coming up that are causing you to doubt yourself, things like that. That's the stuff to address and start to build on that. Start to see what you can work through with that. And then this last bit on pioneering, this is some of my favorite. Because with leaders, they're often forging a new way, or sometimes often just going along a path that's less traveled. And so for leaders, there can be this element of being in the liminal a bit, and maybe sometimes feeling a little bit alone with that. I don't think it has to be that way. I think this is why it's also good to have communities and connection with people. So if you are in a leadership role, you're not feeling like you're doing it all by yourself on your own, because there are lots of other leaders that are forging paths and pioneering. But there's a quality around that, being a pioneer, that is visionary, that's able to see the potential and the opportunities in what might not be clear to other people. Yeah, breathe that in. I also think what can happen with people who are very visionary is sometimes they can try to go too far too quick. And that can sometimes be why they feel like they're alone, because they're racing ahead and then going, oh, wait, why am I by myself? It's because they haven't really shared all the stuff yet. They're just expecting everybody to be there. And I think sometimes as well is that there's this idea of showing up without having really processed through the information first. They haven't really learned how to distill it down or share it in a way that is digestible or easier to understand. So I think with that pioneering spirit, there's also an element of timing that you have to work through and become aware of. So because even if you can see it very clearly, not everybody might be there with you yet. But that's why they're working with you, because in that area, they recognize that you are leading and that you are bringing something through for them. Yeah, so I mean, there may be some qualities that I've talked about tonight that you really resonate with already, that you go, oh yeah, I've got that within me. And some that you may go, I don't know about that. And that's okay. Nobody's expecting perfection within all of these. But yeah, I just wanted to see if anybody would add any other qualities that feel important. Type away in the chat, feel free to share there. Yeah, if it feels like I've missed anything, or if there's anything worth emphasizing, again, within that, I would love to hear from you on that. I mean, again, some of these things we could talk about for a long, long time. I'm just trying to make sure we don't run over. But hopefully this will kind of at least ignite some ideas or create some awareness for you. Yeah, I would really say that, looking at things around leadership is that there is a quality of being called to it. And if it doesn't feel 100% easy or graceful, that is okay. It shows that you're taking it seriously, and it shows that you want to do a good job of it, and that you want to show up with your gifts and your integrity. Yeah, Brianna, pioneers and leaders do not have to be alone, but the fact that speed ahead is really useful framing. How can pioneers learn to share what they know or feel through their intuition in ways that other people understand? This is the question of my life, Brianna. I mean, what I found is that if I spend time with it and meditate with it and or integrate it into my own practices, or whatever I'm doing, and it becomes more embodied, then it's much easier to express in ways that are understandable and people can connect with. If it's still too much up in the ether, because I work in the mystical like this, I work in the mystical and the liminal space, and a lot of the work that I do, the quality is ineffable. Like, it's hard to put language to. So I feel like I'm kind of in this realm all the time. But the more I embody it, and the more I live it, and the more I practice it myself, the more I find the language for it. And what I found a lot of times with the things that I'm doing is that sometimes I'm like 6 months ahead of myself, and I get really excited, and I'm like, this is going to work. And then I try to do it like an offering or whatever, and it's like, and it just hasn't clicked with people yet, because I haven't also quite embodied it enough to be able to express it. So some of it is I probably need that 6 months too. And then all of a sudden, a few months later, people are like, oh, I get it. Like, they're resonating with it. They get it. Yeah. So I found for myself, it's really about, okay, I need to spend some more time with this. I really need to understand. Sometimes it's the mechanics of it. Sometimes it's more of just how the energy kind of translates into the physical. So hopefully that answers that question. But yeah, that's a great question. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. How can we embody the different aspects of our leadership when we lead or pioneer in different ways across sectors, realms, and areas? When our leadership energy feels disjointed, what can we do to integrate that? Yeah, great questions, Brianna. Yeah, I think my perspective on it is that if you embody these gifts and values and virtues, they translate across any sector, really, for a lot of this stuff. So I think that sometimes we think, oh, I need to show up in this way for these people or this way for these people. But again, I think if we can recognize that I'm showing up as all of me, and everything I need within me to do this is here. So if it's feeling disjointed, I would maybe look and see, whether it's a certain job or a certain population of people, are there any of those that don't feel as aligned as they could, or that something needs to shift or adjust in that? Yeah, it may just be that something isn't quite as aligned as it could be. Yeah, that. So I would maybe feel into that and see if there's anything there. And again, it could be that it just requires maybe a small shift in your perspective, or just a different way of approaching things or looking at things. Yeah, or it could be something kind of more fundamental on a I don't know, on a kind of human practical level too. But yeah, I would kind of be asking the questions of, what is disjointed within me that's creating this feeling of it being disjointed here. Yeah, hopefully that helps. Learn to really feel boundaries are so important. Yeah. I used to try and be available all the time, to the point of exhaustion. So boundaries are the key. I've learned the hard way. Yeah, you know what? I think a lot of us learn the hard way with boundaries, Lorna. That's definitely not just you. But yeah, I think, one of the things I've really found is that having healthy boundaries is the most compassionate thing you can do, because what it does is it helps people know the ways and times in which you're willing to show up and be you and be really clear and open and the best you possible. It helps them to recognize, because some people just were never taught boundaries in their families, or whatever their circumstances were, they just didn't learn them growing up. They were never taught them very well. So I think that when we set clear, healthy boundaries, people can, it may trigger some stuff because they're going to have to adjust some things and look at it, but ultimately it shows them that that's a clearer, healthier energy to have. And people can respect that on some level. So yeah, I think it's really compassionate, because people know that you're going to show up with clear, healthy energy, clear, healthy boundaries. That's what they're going to get from you on a consistent basis. And especially if people haven't had that before, that's so important. Yeah. So I think a lot of times people say they feel a bit guilty about it, but it's so loving. It's really kind to just have those really clear boundaries. Definitely. Oh, thank you, Brianna. Makes sense around shifting or adjusting. I think I'm growing or shifting in my work and realizing some things need to go. Asking myself if something is genius work. It all feels good, but not everything feels like it's in flow. Yes, asking that question is helpful. Yeah. And I like that genius work. One of my obsessions in life is around mastery, which I think, you can always ask that question of, is it actually possible to reach that? Maybe not. For me, it's still up in the air. But I do think we all have areas of genius. But again, I think we're cultivating them. We're learning them. I think we're born with certain proclivities or, leanings or, callings as well. Things that may feel easier for us to develop. But I think it's still, we still develop them through practice and through applying them. Yeah, so I do think we all have our areas of genius to kind of cultivate and play with and work within. But sometimes the getting there doesn't always feel as easy, for sure. Right. Cool. So what I'm going to do is, if you're typing away in the chat, type away. I'm just going to share a little bit about some offerings I have coming up, and then we'll stop the recording. And if there's any last questions, then we can do that, because we've still got some time. But just really briefly, I've revamped, well, most of everything I do right now. And so my seasonal membership is changing. So it's now called the Remembering Collective. And so you can join for a season, or, or choose the seasons you want to join, or you can join for the whole year. And really, this is a journey of awakening and a journey of Dharma and purpose. And so, of course, leadership and all these things we've been talking about will be major components of it. So the idea with these is I'll still have my seasonal events like solstice, eclipses, equinoxes, those and mid-season calls. And then each season there will be about 7 live calls, which will be more like a taught course. And I'm doing this because it feels like these are the topics that we can really go deep with, that will make a big impact in people's lives. So the winter container is going to be around intuition, intuitive senses, psychic senses, the nervous system, and how our intuition connects us with truth and our own inner compass, our own ability to choose, to be empowered, to have integrity. All these things we've talked about tonight are really, for me, linked with our intuition, and being able to, understand those signs and signals and use it on a daily basis, not just every once in a while. The spring, we're going to be looking at conscious boundaries. In the summer, we're going to be looking at healing practices and how your karmic wounds, the things that repeat over and over again, are actually part of your dharma. They help guide you to your purpose. They help you understand what your purposes in life or purposes are. And then the autumn is going to be initiation and becoming the elder. So it's really looking at cycles. So the Pluto cycles, life and death, life, rebirth. And, because we are all operating in cycles of time, of seasons, of, hormones, of, all this stuff is working around us in all these cycles. And if we can learn to embrace them and work with them instead of fighting against them, we're able to evolve and change and grow in a much more graceful, wonderful way. So there's lots of information on my website, but I just wanted to share that with you because we'll be starting with the solstice on the 21st of December with that event. And then the live calls will start kind of the 10th of January. So if that appeals to anyone, you're free to get in touch with me and ask questions about that at any point, but there's lots more information on my website. And what I'm going to be launching in the spring, especially for leaders, is I'm going to be launching an apprenticeship. So this is for healing practitioners, spiritual teachers, leaders who have a spiritual foundation, who are wanting to show up to be of service and have an impact. And not only, so we'll look at things like what you're wanting to offer, the ways you're wanting to show up professionally, and cultivating really ethical, healthy offerings with those, with really healthy boundaries, but also looking at what you as a person, the things for you to study, the practices, the things for you to do that are going to be good for you as a being, but also are going to help inform the way you show up with your clients and students and the people that you're working with. So basically I created that container because this is what I wish I'd had 10 years ago. Because I think people can take lots of amazing courses, but then there's not a lot in between those courses. And so I was kind of cobbling together mentorships and, coaches and things like that, which I found some amazing people. But, I just kind of thought, how wonderful would it have been to have somebody walk me through this process and help me have some clarity and some guidance on some things I could be introducing into my own life for myself, but also for the impact I'm wanting to have. So that will be launching in the spring. If that appeals to anyone, again, feel free to get in touch. And let me know what that brings up for you if you'd like to have more. So thank you all so much for joining. You guys are amazing. It's always great to connect in this way. So thank you so much for being here.